Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Frank Mularcik, and in this video I'm going to be talking about one of the most popular personal finance books out there, and that is none other than Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And this book was actually published in 1997, which is a whole 23 years ago now, and in that time it sold about 32 million copies in over 40 countries worldwide. And because of this popularity, Robert actually published a updated edition, I guess, in 2017. Basically, it's pretty much exactly the same book. He just added some little notes in there, here and there, about events of the past 20 years that he thought were important enough to talk about. So basically, it's pretty much the same book, but I've heard so many things from various people about this book, and so I was just really excited to read this book, and I was definitely not disappointed in what it talked about in the book and what I learned, I guess. So without further ado, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll get right into it. So Robert Kiyosaki was born in 1947 in Hawaii, and his dad and family was fairly well off. His dad was a professor with a PhD. He made a pretty good salary, but he spent most of his money and didn't really have anything left over. So this was what Robert called his poor dad. And then Robert's friend Mike, his dad was a businessman of sorts, and this was Robert's rich dad. And Mike's dad, Rich Dad, he didn't act very wealthy. You know, his house was kind of small. He didn't really drive some fancy car or wear any fancy clothes, but he had a bunch of businesses and a bunch of assets that were making him money all the time. And so Robert, growing up, basically him and Mike were trying to learn how to make money, and they actually started trying to cast nickels out of aluminum, I think. And so basically Robert's dad, his poor dad, said, "Oh, you can't do that, that's illegal," and basically shut him down. Well, then they went to Mike's dad, basically, because he was a businessman, and they asked Mike's dad to teach them how to make money. And basically in the book are the basic lessons that Mike's dad taught Robert and Mike over the next like 30 years or so. So there's a lot of debate around whether Rich Dad is a real character or not, and I think he's probably not 100% real, and the book is probably not 100% a factual representation of Robert's life growing up. But at the same time, I think there's definitely had to have been some influence of a father figure like Rich Dad that sort of influenced Robert to think the way he does and give him some of these ideas at least. But regardless of whether you think Rich Dad is real or not, the ideas and the lessons in this book are still the same, and you should still take them at the same face value. So I don't think it really matters. So basically the book is just broken up into the 6 basic lessons and ideas that Rich Dad taught Robert, and now Robert is basically teaching us. So he basically explains the concepts, and then he also intertwines that with a lot of stories of like his life and how he learned these lessons and how he applied these lessons in his own life and how you can do the same in your own life. So I thought that was really helpful, and it's actually pretty interesting because when he first was trying to get it published in the 90s, he had a lot of trouble getting it published because some of the publishers basically said these ideas are stupid and no one's gonna listen to them and they're not true and stuff like that. But now look at them, it's, you know, one of the best-selling books on this topic ever, so I guess we can say Robert was right probably and the publishers were wrong. So of the 6 lessons in the book, honestly the one I found the most useful and the most mind-opening was probably the first one, which was basically just a discussion of assets versus liabilities and what they are. And basically he actually breaks it down into some really basic definitions. He basically just says that an asset is something that puts money in your pocket whether you work for it or not, and a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. And these are just so simple that it's really easy to understand, but also they can be applied pretty much everywhere, and they make sense in pretty much all applications. I really found this definition of an asset like super eye-opening, I guess, because it made me think about all the things I have that are just kind of sitting there, and sure, they're useful in my lives, but financially they're not really benefiting me at all. So it's really makes you think about when you go to buy something, is this really worth that money, and how else could I spend this money to produce an asset that would in turn produce some cash flow? So for example, my phone, I mean, it's really not producing any cash flow, so therefore it wouldn't be defined as an asset, but at the same time, I get a lot of utility out of my phone. So that's just an interesting way to think about things when you buy them. And that sort of leads to the next topic in that section, which is the point that your house is not an asset, or wherever you're living is not an asset, because basically you just have your mortgage that you're paying down, so that's a liability, and over time you're building equity, but you're not really getting any cash flow from that. However, if you own some sort of rental properties, yeah, that's an asset, because then you can get a positive cash flow. And so I think a lot of people don't like that he's telling them that your house is not an asset. And at the same time, he's certainly not saying that you shouldn't buy a house. He's just saying, when you think about your finances and think about where you are, you shouldn't say, oh, I'm doing great, I'm following the American dream, I own a house, and just kind of stop there, because in the end, that house really isn't going to produce you anything. It's just going to kind of sit there. It's certainly going to give you a place to live, but it's not really going to produce any financial benefit that's going to allow you to cover your expenses at some point. And the great thing that I found about the book is you really don't have to agree with everything Robert's saying, and you don't have to say, oh, he said that and now I agree with that 100%. It's really about opening your mind to new possibilities and making you think, because especially with that asset discussion and whether your home is an asset or not, I'm not exactly sure where exactly I stand on that. I mean, I think your home is definitely something that is valuable. Whether or not it produces cash flow, it certainly doesn't in most cases. So by that definition, it wouldn't be an asset. But at the same time, it just made me think about that and sort of question my beliefs or understanding of that concept. And just with that discussion and that thought, it allows you to have a more informed and a more nuanced opinion and way of thinking. There's honestly so much more I could say about this book and talk to you guys about so many more interesting things that I learned from this book, but I really don't want to make this video an hour long. But I will say that I would definitely recommend literally everyone to read this book. I think everyone should read this book. It was just so helpful, and just like I said before, even if I didn't agree with everything that he said, or if I didn't change my mind on every single topic, it certainly allowed me to think about it and maybe question my beliefs and develop a more nuanced understanding of the topic that will benefit me in the future. So I definitely think everyone should read it. I will leave an Amazon link in the description where you can buy it. If you do use that link, I will receive a small commission, but the price that you pay would be just the regular price that you would always pay for it, so it is no additional cost for you. So if you want to buy it, I would really appreciate it if you use my link, as it will help me out a little bit. And the quote of the video is, "Winners are not afraid of losing, but losers are. Failure is part of the process of success. People who avoid failure also avoid success." And obviously this one comes straight from Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I really, really like this one because it kind of reminds me of how I feel that sometimes I am trying to avoid failure too much, and I'm trying to play it a little bit too safe, especially when I'm young, and I have plenty of time ahead of me to mess up and learn and all that stuff. So sometimes I definitely feel like I need to take a little bit more risk. So this quote definitely reminded me of that, and hopefully in the future I can keep that in my mind all the time. All right, thanks for watching to the end, guys. I really appreciate it. I just really want to say again, I highly encourage you to read this book. I know some people aren't really into reading, so there is definitely audiobooks out there as well you can listen to. But if you haven't read it already, definitely go read it. And if you have read it already, let me know what your favorite part about it was, or what you learned the most in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.